Afternoon Adventures, coming to you with a little bit of a different video today. I want to talk a bit about HP, health points, hit points, as the characters have them, and how we can overcome some weaknesses, perceived weaknesses, in some classes, and how we can avoid certain stereotypes that barbarians are far and away the tankiest class, and wizards and sorcerers are squishy little idiots who have to stay away from danger. Because neither of those things is necessarily true. I have seen just so many times online people talking about how blade singers should just stay in the back and cast spells like any other wizard, or that, sorcerers and such shouldn't be in the front line because their d6 is too small and they have too few hit points and they are going to be squishy. So I want to go over some numbers and just some general tips and tricks on how to get your character to have more HP, because it is not all about the hit die, folks. That barbarian D12 is shiny and pretty and neat, but it is certainly not necessary to have a character that can take a hit. So here we have my spreadsheet that I made with all the classes, their hit dice. I'll go over what these numbers mean in a second. The average on their hit die, which I always recommend that players use the average instead of rolling for their HP per level. It's a more fair way to do it. That's kind of a discussion for a different day, but that's the number I'm going with right here. We have, of course, 7 for the barbarian, 6, 5, 4, walking on down for the smaller hit dice. We have, I didn't reset this from the last time I was playing with it, but the con mod, constitution modifier, of course. In this column, there's a column for the tough feat, which of course adds 2 HP per level. Dwarves gain 1 HP per level, and Dragon Ancestry Sorcerers also gain 1 per level. I also included another column because there are magic items that can increase it, like the Berserker Axe and the Armor of Safeguarding from Bigby Presents Glory of the Giants. I think those are the only 2 that I know of, but there may be others as well. And also things like the Boon of Fortitude, the epic boon feat that we can get at level 19 if we want to, and that adds a flat 40 HP, which actually wouldn't go in that column because that would get multiplied into this. This number is the important one. This is our total HP that our character is getting per level from all sources combined. People talk about tankiness in terms of hit die, but often leave out the fact that all these other factors contribute potentially more, at least just as much, depending on your setup. So let's take a look at how adjusting these numbers adjusts this number. If we have our barbarian with, let's say 16, so plus 3 in constitution, and a fighter with, let's say, also 16. Now these numbers, instead of 7 and 6, are 10 and 9. We've adjusted the numbers in the same way, so they still are 1 apart. Now, if, say, the fighter takes the tough feat, now they have more HP per level, which means at level 1, we actually see they have the same HP, but above level 1, the fighter actually ends up with more. Now, this first level is different because of this number over here. These are the level 1 bonuses. It's easy to look at, and in fact the player's handbook says to do this, your level 1 HP as maximum on your hit die plus relevant modifiers, constitution modifier, tough feat, etc. But I actually look at it as your total HP per level plus the difference between the average and maximum on the die. I look at it as a bonus. That makes things easier for me to process. I don't know if that helps you, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. So, the difference between 7 and the maximum 12 on a d12, for example, is 5. So a barbarian has the first level bonus plus 5. Fighters, it's the difference between 6 and 10, it's plus 4. The D8 classes have plus 3, and sorcerers and warlocks have plus 2. Also, I keep saying fighter for the D10 classes, because it's just an easy example, but paladins and rangers, whenever I say fighter, that applies to them as well. So with the difference in this first level bonus, we can see that barbarians start with 1 more because of their first level bonus than fighters, rangers, and paladins do. But because in our example we've raised the HP per level by 1 over what the barbarian has, their first level HP has evened out, and it's exact. But then we can see at higher levels, the fighter, paladin, ranger gets more HP level over level. It'll pull ahead. Now this is also true, of course, if we have, say, a cleric, I don't know, let's go with 14 dexterity, why not? +2. And why not also throw the tough feat on there? Now they have a little less, but only marginally, than the barbarian. Maybe they're a dwarf. Now they're on par. They have less HP because this first level bonus is lower. It's +3 instead of +5, so they have 2 less. But, as we can see, they stay on par with the barbarian, only 2 HP behind it at every level. That's because the HP per level number is the same. Alright, I've returned these to 0. Let's look at another example. Let's say we've got a sorcerer who has 16 constitution. Not too terribly hard to do because sorcerers only really need charisma. And let's say we've got a fighter who also has 16 because, again, she only needs strength or dexterity. So these two have the same constitution modifier, but let's say our sorcerer is a dwarf. Now their HP is pretty close to on par, but let's say at level 3, the dwarf takes the Dragon Ancestry subclass for sorcerer. Now what we see is that with the same constitution, which really this could be any number as long as it's the same, a dwarf Dragon Ancestry sorcerer has the same HP per level as a fighter, or paladin, or ranger. The fighter will have more HP at level 1 because, again, this coefficient here, not coefficient, constant, math. And because I have set the spreadsheet up to not include the Dragon Ancestry bonus at level 1, because, again, we don't get our subclass until level 3, so at level 1 we will be 3 behind the fighter, but then starting at level 3 and on up, much like we saw in the other example there, with the same HP per level, we stay only 2 behind the fighter. A sorcerer with the same HP as a fighter is nothing to scoff at. That's a lot of HP for a caster. And if we want to take it even farther, we can add the tough feat. And now look, even with, say, a barbarian with a con mod of +3, the sorcerer actually has more. At level 1, they're still a little bit behind, because we don't have that Dragon Ancestry bonus and because of these first level bonuses. But then, look what happens. At level 3, 35, same as the barbarian. Level 5, 57, 2 ahead of the barbarian because this is higher. So, assuming, of course, the barbarian isn't also a dwarf and doesn't also have the tough feat. There are other good origin feats that the barbarian could take. And look, with this setup, we can even get over 200 HP as a sorcerer. We can do it. That's assuming we're a dwarf and a Dragon Ancestry sorcerer, of course, which not all sorcerers are gonna be dwarves and Dragon Ancestry. But just as an example, all these choices are made at character creation. We have 16 constitution, we're a dwarf. Dragon Ancestry is technically a choice at level 3, but I always have a plan for what subclasses I'm picking when I make the character. I don't know about y'all. I consider that a character creation choice for myself. And of course the tough feat we get right away at level 1. So all of this is set up for us right away with no further investment after character creation. We don't have to take any more feats, we don't have to raise constitution any farther. If we do, we can get quite a bit of HP, 262 at level 20. Also, I should point out, I have built in the capstone for barbarians at level 20. They get an extra 40 HP because their constitution goes up by 2. The point, or one of the points I'm trying to make with this video is that constitution bonus, as well as these other bonuses, have a big hand in determining whether a character is tanky or not. It's really easy to look at a barbarian's HP at level 20 with all bonuses, everything accounted for, and say, wow, they are so much more tanky than the other classes. And yes, at level 20 they are, because of that class feature they get. And of course, because of resistance to damage types and other things that barbarians get along the way as well. But if you look at level 19 HP, which is why I have this column in here, they're really not that far ahead. With the same constitution modifier, of course, they have only 20 more HP, 1 per level, as the fighter, paladin, ranger. I should also mention that with this setup, granted with if we go back to 16 Constitution here, we have 11 HP per level. That's almost triple what the Sorcerer and Wizard get just from their hit die. That's how insignificant the hit die is in this build. And applying the same to, say, a Barbarian, well, they don't get the Dragon Sorcerer bonus, but applying much of the same to a Barbarian means that almost half their HP is coming from other modifiers, not just their hit die. And of course, by the high levels, it's likely that a Barbarian will have more Constitution because they're incentivized to take it for their armor class, in addition to having more HP and better con saves. Not all Barbarians will have their Constitution maxed out at 20, but it is at least more likely, I will say. So even with these bonuses, we can see 15 HP per level instead of the 7 that they get just from their hit die. It's over half their health coming from other things. But it's not only a good thing to invest in your HP if you're a frontliner, and you don't have to be a paladin, fighter, ranger, or paladin to be a frontliner. In fact, many rangers aren't frontliners, but you know what I mean. Bladesinger Wizards are the obvious example, and they're one that a lot of people point to as being very squishy for a frontliner. People also say that about monks, because monks need multiple stats, and it's harder for them to raise Constitution to the same levels that, say, a fighter or barbarian would. And I want to emphasize that makes those classes, like monk, less tanky because they can't invest as much in Constitution, not so much because they have a smaller hit die. They're only losing 1 HP per level against, say, a fighter. To summarize the tough feat, it's pretty much an advantage of 2 die sizes. It's equivalent to, so if you have a d6 hit die and the tough feat, you pretty much have a d10. Not when you're healing yourself at the end of a short rest, I suppose, but in terms of the amount of HP you have, it's very, very similar. If you're a d8 class and you have the tough feat, it's pretty much like having a d12, like a barbarian. Having a smaller hit die is that simple to overcome. So in summary, the point I'm trying to make, which I try to always have a thesis for these videos, some central idea that I'm driving toward, and in this one I've been struggling to kind of figure out what that is. Am I trying to point out that the d12 that barbarians get for their hit dice isn't as glorious as a lot of people would have you believe? Am I trying to emphasize that Bladesingers can be in the front line of combat and be plenty durable without having a bigger hit die? Am I trying to emphasize that dwarf dragon ancestry sorcerers are as tough as fighters? It's kind of all these things. And I'm not really sure how best to summarize all of that, except to say, if you want your character to have lots of HP, you can get your character to have lots of HP. I suppose if there's one thing you take away from the video, it's that. The tough feat, raising your Constitution, which is easier to do now, by the way. With the way general feats work now, it's easier to get our main stat up to 20, which means it's easier to get our secondary stats higher. And for a lot of characters, Constitution could be that second stat. A lot of spellcasters, for example, only need 1 ability score. It's a bit harder for monks, like I said earlier, and paladins, because they need wisdom and charisma. Rangers need wisdom, eldritch knights and arcane tricksters need intelligence, things like that. But overall, if we want to raise our Constitution, we can do it. And the tough feat, Constitution modifier, being a dwarf, and other modifiers, and other defensive features that we get, like Song of Defense and Barbarian Rage, Second Wind, make us tankier than just the amount of HP that is on our character sheet would have us believe anyway. You know, I have played a Bladesinger from level 1 to 20, and I was never any more worried in the front line that my character was going to die than when I'm playing a fighter or a barbarian or anyone else. But what I'm trying to say is, just play the character that you want to play them the way you want to play them, and don't let things like hit die drag you down. Anyway, I hope I haven't meandered too much. I hope I can edit this into something coherent, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and happy adventuring in 2025.